This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
I welcome you into the Chris Stigall Show podcast, and thank you so much for your 5-star reviews and written reviews of this show. It means more to us than we could possibly say. It also means a lot to me that you call and let John Ruhlman know, the guy that sponsors this show, that not only do you appreciate him underwriting the show to keep our lights on, but I know that you're going to appreciate him once you have a phone call and a conversation about how he can save you on health insurance rates. Folks, this is no time to screw around. In inflation as it is, the economy as it is, people taking on debt, health insurance premiums are hundreds, thousands of dollars a month, I know. And I have had friends that have reached out, made a phone call, and found out that they qualify for thousands of dollars in savings a month. No kidding. Got a friend, he's family of 4. It's him and his wife and 2 kids. One of the kids has some special health considerations. They needed some additional insurance. And with one phone call, this friend of mine was able to save $2,000 a month. So he was paying this exorbitant sum of money for his daughter. He got better coverage for his daughter. He got better coverage for the rest of his family, and he saved $2,000 a month with a phone call. Now, if you're a small business owner, if you're a retiree on a fixed income, and you're paying out the nose for your health insurance premiums, usmedicalplan.com. John Ruhlman awaits your call today. The team at US Medical Plan, 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321. They have a whole customer care department. If you're engrossed right now in some nightmare bureaucratic mess with health insurance and you need an advocate, John and his team at usmedicalplan.com do that too. When you go to the website, look for my smiling face. That's how you know you're on the right spot. But I'm talking about 80 different private insurers John has access to, so he can truly shop and compare like nobody I've ever referred to you before. If you buy your own health insurance and you haven't called John and said, can you save me money? It's killing me. I want you to at least make the phone call. It'll take 2 minutes. Here's my plan. Here's what I spend. Can you do better? And what if he says yes? And then that means like hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars a month you've saved because you picked up the phone and called. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. It's our Faith and Freedom event out there at the Fuge in Warminster, Bucks County. If you'd like to attend, then I hope that you will be there. Dr. Robert Jeffress, along with Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher and my colleague Tim DeMoss from Philadelphia's Christian Radio, AM 560 WFIL. I'll be there as well, and I can't wait to say hi to you, our great friends and sponsors, Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental, as well as Mike and Mark Chapman, the brothers of Chapman Windows, Doors, Siding, and Stucco Remediation out there in Westchester, and the New Eagle Village shops in Wayne, and, of course, Vidian, Chrysler, Jeep, Plymouth. All great sponsors. They'll all be there on hand, so you can come meet the Chapman folks. You can come meet Bob and his team from Williamsburg Dental. I would also say that the night before, if you're so inclined, the afternoon before, September 10th, I'll be at the Uptown Theater in Westchester. Ray's play Tommy and Me. It's a matinee, and it will be in, out, and done before the Birds kick off the regular season on that Sunday. All right, so if you'd like to go, I hope to see you there, too. So I'll be doing a little Q&A with the cast and with Ray and your audience questions on Sunday. Monday night is the Faith and Freedom event. And then actually Tuesday, by the way, I just found out I'm going to be visiting the Chapman people. Tuesday night, I'm going to be visiting the Chapman Windows Doors location in Westchester. So it is the Harumph Tour 2023. I think I'm going to make a concert shirt. Hope to see you at any one of those spots. Go to 990theanswer.com for your tickets to the Faith and Freedom Summit on Monday night. That's going to be a good one. And you'll meet Dennis and Mike and Dr. Jeffress. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really looking forward to it. So this week marked 2 years since the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan that killed 13 of our heroes. Morgan Ortagus is the former spokesperson for the State Department. She's the founder of Polaris National Security. We're always grateful to have her perspective. Welcome back, Morgan. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Great to be back with you.
I was just thinking about Biden's remarks during that time. He said that this couldn't go on forever. It was time to end this war. Endless war wasn't an option, blah, blah, blah. And in thinking about that this week, I consider what he says about Ukraine today, which is this can go on as long as it takes, and we're willing to give as much as it takes. And I'm sincerely, as a foreign policy matter, that seems terribly inconsistent inside of 2 years of one another.
It is, and that's not the strategy that the American people are asking for. Listen, it's important to remember, and I don't say this as an exercise of just casting blame on Biden and his team, but it's important to remember why we're in the pickle in Ukraine that we're in. And part of it most of it is a massive deterrence failure that this administration had, right? They said at the beginning of this administration that they wanted to deter Putin from invading Ukraine, and they failed at that. One of the big reasons I believe, Chris, that they failed at deterrence, and there's many, but I think a lot of it is this 2-year anniversary of the withdrawal from Afghanistan that you and I talked about. Now, listen, I was in the Trump administration at the State Department, and we worked very actively on President Trump's wish, which was to responsibly draw down from Afghanistan and end America's longest war. But I can tell you, working for President Trump and Mike Pompeo, that there is no way that we would have left Afghanistan the way in which we saw the chaotic withdrawal happen 2 years ago, which resulted in us losing 13. I mean, listen, they were mostly teenagers. Those young men and women that we lost because of that chaotic withdrawal. We heard the Stiper testimony about how they were basically unable to take any action against a suicide bomber. And here we are looking at 2 years later, and, you wonder why we have a war in Europe, where it's clear that despots and thugs around the world were emboldened by President Biden and his team's failure in Afghanistan. I mean, the images of us just looking so incredibly weak as Afghans hung on for their life, holding on to the plane, desperate to flee the country. That was the image that the world saw of us, and it was a very, very weak image, and that has permeated every theater.
When you start your presidency, as Biden did, such that it is, saying that he felt this responsibility to get us out of an endless war. I still, the way I see most conflicts, actually, as you kind of look through, World War II being the exception, but after World War II, it feels to me that most conflicts we get into are endless unless we end them. I'm not saying all of them are unwarranted, but they seem without an end date, and they always seem to end with us sheepishly tucking our tail since World War II almost.
This is why President Trump and why our team in the last administration was so insistent on not getting America involved in senseless wars if we didn't need to be. We were the first administration in a while not to put new troops on the ground anywhere, but we were by no means isolationist. Not at all. In fact, President Trump took the bold and decisive action to take out Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian terrorist who was responsible for hundreds of American deaths. He had no problem taking that action. Remember, when Trump came in, there was an ISIS caliphate in Iraq and Syria, and he unleashed the military and destroyed the physical caliphate of ISIS. So this is someone who is willing to be a strong leader, willing to take decisive military action when it needed, but unwilling to commit us endlessly to things that might not be in the American interest. And here we are 2 years later. We still don't have a full accounting from the State Department of how many Americans were left behind or how many allies were left behind. We actually have guys, I signed a letter to Congress on this. We have guys in Afghanistan, translators and others, people who fought alongside us for years and years and years and took enormous risks for us. And those people, along with some Americans, have still been left behind.
Morgan Ortegas with us. She's now with Polaris National Security. She's the founder there. She's Morgan Ortegas on Twitter, former spokesperson for the State Department. Next week, the Republicans will debate. As I understand it, as of now, and I don't think he's going to change his mind. It doesn't sound like President Trump will be participating. So that leaves, 7 or 8 other candidates to debate on the stage. And I wonder if you're watching, will you be looking for something specific in terms of dialogue related to issues that you talk about, with Polaris National Security? What would you like to hear these people debating, I guess would be my question for you, Morgan.
Oh, gosh, that's a fantastic question. I would love to hear them talk about Taiwan. We have had the policy basically since the Nixon-Kennedy debates. Whenever Taiwan was an issue back then in those presidential debates, we've had this policy of strategic ambiguity as it relates towards Taiwan. President Biden has broken that a little by saying that America would fight to defend Taiwan, but then his administration officials quickly walked that back. There's a range of hawkish views in the Republican Party that really started with Donald Trump as it relates to the threat of the Chinese Communist Party. So I'd love to know, what actually their plans are for Taiwan. And if they do think that we would be willing to fight on behalf of Taiwan, how in the world do we get our military in shape? Our Navy is so woefully unprepared for that fight. So that would probably be my top question. We did see some of the B-list candidates make some silly statements saying that, we just needed to secure the semiconductors in Taiwan and then China could have them. That's such a myopic misunderstanding of the issue. And nor does it, like I said, this debate goes back to the Kennedy-Nixon presidential debates, which maybe some of the current younger presidential contenders don't understand.
It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years now. But now he has 2 brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, it's really a thrill for me to have both the dentists, my daughter and Dr. Jared Geddes. One of the things that I love about them both is when they don't have a patient in their chair, they're in my room watching what I do and trying to learn from me. And we hear enough about the new generation and if they think they know everything and they don't want to work. And I've got 2 dentists who are really, really want to learn and really, really willing to work hard. And I enjoy learning from them. They brought some new skills and some new technologies to our office that will be great benefits to our patients. And so, if anything, I think that having them both there is going to expand and lengthen my career as opposed to shorten my career.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Yeah, the Taiwanese vice president made a trip to the United States. Japan and South Korea's leaders are going to Camp David to talk to Biden today, supposedly. What's going on there? Why all this communication right now?
Historically, Japan and South Korea, they have had animosity is a nice word to say about their modern relationship, but for obvious reasons. But what's really bringing our friends and allies together in this region is that they all feel the existential threat from the Chinese Communist Party, and I think that they all understand that the only antidote to a threatening China that wants to control and dominate and take over the region, they know the only antidote to that is the United States. And so it's incredibly important. I think the most important thing that we can be doing right now is doubling down and tripling down on our relationships with Japan, South Korea, India, Australia. We have to be focusing on the Pacific theater. And so I think actually good for the administration for holding these meetings. They need to hold them, but we need real teeth. Listen, I said this when I was in the Trump administration, that the challenge of the Chinese Communist Party is bigger than the Republican Party. It's bigger than the Democratic Party. It's something that we all are going to have to work on together.
This is an earnest feeling that I have as an American citizen, and you may disagree, and I hope that you do, actually. I hope you'll talk me out of what I'm about to say. What I feel deep in my soul is that this is a president that's not only insincere in his commitment in beating back China, but rather is compromised by China and almost, dare I say, helpful. I don't want to say sympathetic, but interested in being helpful to their advances or not getting in their way and impeding them, because I genuinely feel he's on the take. I think he's compromised. I earnestly feel that way, Morgan. Is that too much?
Well, I got to tell you that during the Obama administration, when he was vice president and he was in control of the China portfolio, so a lot of people won't remember this. I actually wrote a long piece about this in The Spectator. He was in charge of the China portfolio. Obama said, I want you to personally handle this relationship, right? And it was when Biden was in charge of the China portfolio that he spent most of his time whining and dining the Chinese, not holding them accountable. We saw their military buildup in the South China Sea. We saw them we saw them stealing billions of dollars worth of American intellectual property. They were incredibly aggressive. It was during this time when Biden was in charge of the relationship that they stole hundreds of thousands of information of our top secret security clearance holders in the United States, stole all of that information. So China became emboldened and brazen under the Obama-Biden administration. They completely missed it. They were, like I said, they were literally too busy whining and dining Xi Jinping to actually see the threat and to challenge it. What they thought was that China's rise, this is what Obama-Biden team thought, China's rise is inevitable. And so in order to avoid conflict, we need to cozy up to them and just sort of nestle into our inevitable decline and their inevitable rise. Mm-hmm. And we threw that scenario on its head in the Trump administration. We said, no, it's not inevitable that China's going to rise and we're going to decline. And actually, we're going to aggressively fight back against that and push back against that because we do not want a world order that's led by the communists.
And so, Morgan, to say he's compromised this Hunter Biden stuff, your time in the State Department, if you were there and we were uncovering, or maybe if you were working in the State Department at the same time Hunter Biden is hopping around the globe, I would assume the State Department then was aware of Hunter Biden's perpetual meetings with different international figures, collecting checks and calling up dad. Yeah. I assume the State Department then was aware of it. Would that have troubled you?
I assume they were as well. And it wasn't just Hunter Biden. Remember, it was also John Kerry's son that was reportedly involved in the business dealings.
Yes.
I've often said this on television when I'm on Fox News. If I was Hillary Clinton, I would be so pissed, right? She and Bill Clinton get in trouble for taking donations through the Clinton Foundation, which, they shouldn't have done because she was Secretary of State. But at least it was a charitable endeavor, right? Here she is getting thrown under the bus and getting in trouble by the Democratic Party for this. Meanwhile, down the street, the vice president son is getting rich and doing straight up business dealings while his father is on official business. That's like 10 times more corrupt. I would be pretty pissed if I was her and see how she got railroaded for all of this and they suffer no consequences.
I have often thought, Morgan, I'll leave you alone with this. I've often thought that the Bidens and the Clintons share in common this kind of love of money. They're sort of unsophisticated money grubbers. I don't think they fundamentally hate the country. I just think they're greedy, self-interested, selfish people. And I think Obama hates them both, sincerely. He finds them useful idiots, but has no time for either of them. That's my gut instinct. Yours?
I have no clue what they all feel about each other. I don't know. But
my point in saying that, Morgan, I sincerely, I think that Clintons and Bidens represent an old guard Democrat Party that Obama has no time for, but use them as a means to an end. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer. I always thought they were useful old guard Democrats, but he's happy to throw them under. I think he did it to Hillary. I think we're watching him do it to Biden now. That's my gut. I don't know, just a theory.
Who knows? What I will tell you is that I think the pattern of corruption from when the Clintons and the Bidens are in office and how their family leeches off of their positions of power should be troubling and concerning to all Americans.
I don't think Obama was corrupt in that way. I think he's a Marxist. I think he's destructive and divisive, and he wants to tear the country apart. But I think he's always sort of been on the up and up, like the Netflix money. He doesn't need to go steal the money or pocket the money. People back the Brinks truck up for him. You know what I'm saying? It's different.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, what matters is how does this affect our national security? And, if you've got Hunter Biden, telling there's really no difference between business executives and Chinese Communist Party executives. And when you have Biden sort of threatening Chinese Communist Party or business officials, give me the money or else.
Yeah.
That's not very good for American national security.
So glad to catch up with you again, Morgan, founder of Polaris National Security. She's Morgan Ortagus, Ortagus. Morgan Ortagus on Twitter, former State Department spokesperson. I hope we can have you back real soon.
Me too. I would love it. Thank you so much.
Telephone number 610-850-098. You see, she's a professional who's a diplomat, and she's a spokesperson for the State Department. I'm just a dope with a lot of theories and emotions. And you can always tell when I start to get off track and she's like, well, I'm a professional and I have responsibilities greater than just opining like you would on a talk show. That's when I know I've wandered into my own headspace when she goes, I can't comment on your crackpot theories, but here's what I do know. I swear to you, I've always felt it in my gut. I have always thought that Barack Obama absolutely hated the Clintons and the Bidens. I've always felt that. I've always felt that he thought, it's like they've been useful. They're familiar, family, nationwide, well-known names, established over generations. Democrats are comfortable with them. Barack Obama's ideology is extraordinary and radical, far more radical than even most average Democrat voters can embrace. But if he could slowly sell it through the use of these old corrupt hillbillies called the Bidens and the Clintons, I've always thought he was willing to use them to do it. But in terms of their two families, I mean, what the Clintons did to Barack Obama, first of all, I mean, never forget. Bill Clinton said of Barack Obama, he should be fetching my coffee and carrying my bags. Yeah, don't think Barack Obama ever got over that, first of all. And as for Joe, never underestimate Joe's ability to F things up, he famously said of Joe. He thinks these people are corrupt, and they are, of course. He knows they are. I almost maintain he allowed them to be the money-grubbing, money-laundering thieves they are, so that ultimately one day when they finally hang themselves, give them enough rope, he's like, well, you were useful. Good luck on the other side. I don't know. Maybe I've watched too many Netflix shows, but that's always been my working theory about him. He used them and let them do what they do, knowing full well eventually he wouldn't need them anyway, and shoved them in front of the train.
Yeah, Chris, I don't think the Clintons ever anticipated Obama being more powerful than they are.
No.
I don't think they ever saw that coming.
No, that's why they were so dismissive of him. I'll never forget Bill Clinton saying he should be fetching my coffee. Oh, my gosh. I don't know if you've been following the career of Dennis Quaid, the actor and singer. He's got a brand new gospel album out. He's also the star of a brand new summertime film it looks tremendous. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks really inspirational. It's called The Hill. It comes out Friday, August 25th, and it's the true story of professional baseball player Ricky Hill, who grew up in a small, poor Texas town, and he had this extraordinary ability for hitting a baseball, but he had leg braces and this degenerative spinal disease, so he's a big hitter, but they always assumed that baseball was a far-off dream that he could never achieve. His dad was a pastor and hoped that Ricky would become a pastor himself, but Ricky decided he was going to try out for the major leagues in front of a scout, and he pushed hard to overcome the disability, and he went on to become a baseball phenom. It's a true story. It's called The Hill, starring Dennis Quaid, Colin Ford, and Scott Glenn. And there are so few movies these days that are, one, feel-good movies, inspirational movies, but two, movies that the whole family can enjoy. It hits theaters Friday, August 25th. Once again, it's called The Hill, rated PG. Don't miss it. You can get your tickets now for pre-order in most cities where the theater is showing the film. But again, it's due out in theaters Friday, August 25th. It's called The Hill, starring Dennis Quaid. Hope you'll check it out. Timely book, just out, and can't wait to dive into it. The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarchy Has Destroyed Us. The author, Dr. Carrie Gress, joins us to talk about it. It seems that being a woman these days, it kind of depends on who you ask. Sometimes it seems some people, particularly on the left, suggest men can be women, and some of the best women are men now, which is a strange notion, given that just a few years ago, I like to point out, Dr. Gress, I welcome you in, that I remember it was not terribly long ago, people were wearing the pink hats and screaming about the patriarchy. Now I'm very confused to hear some of those same women saying men can be women. So good morning. I welcome you. Hope you can make sense of it.
Good morning. Well, I'm not sure I can make sense of it, but I can at least help us figure out how we got to this point. So, yeah, it's pretty irrational and nonsensical because it's usually about the same set of people who are confused about all of it.
I don't share, I don't think, much in common with people like J.K. Rowling, for instance, from what I read and understand about her politics. But one thing she's not backed off of, and I don't know, even people like Adele, who I don't know have been overtly political about it, but I'm interested in these women who have become wildly famous in popular culture. And the one thing they will not back off of that has gotten them savaged is saying, I'm proud of being a woman. Being a woman means something, and I'm not gonna back off of that. What an odd thing now to get to lose your reputation over.
Right. No, it's incredible what the cancel culture is doing, and how, for obviously as long as anybody can remember, the whole goal was to really promote and empower women. And, the fact that the ideology of feminism is actually really imploding over this, just the infighting that's happening between the celebrities that you mentioned, and then, of course, those on the left who really want to admit men, as long as you've got the feelings of a woman, you must be a woman. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty amazing to just see how stark the dividing line is coming, at us. And it feels like this just kind of popped up, but in fact, actually, the ideology has been around for about over 200 years now, and that's really what I looked into in the book. Was at what point did we get so confused about this? But I think the best way that I can describe what's really happened is feminism has asked the question, how do we help women? But instead of saying, how do we help women as women, it's been saying, how do we help women become like men? And when you start looking at everything through that lens, then it makes a lot of sense, because we've so prioritized the masculine and put it on a pedestal while simultaneously trying to get rid of gender altogether. That was a big movement in the 70s, and it just hasn't let up, that erasing of gender. So that's really what we're seeing right now is the fallout of all of that, because we haven't said anything good about being a real woman. And at the same time, we keep telling men, you need to become like us, but we hate you the way that you are. And anyway, it's just incredible, this rift that's been created and the kind of confusion that we're all sort of trying to sort through.
Dr. Carrie Gress's book is called The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarchy Has Destroyed Us. I have had the privilege through the years of attending some events before she passed, Phyllis Schlafly. And I was so honored here in this year to receive the Phyllis Schlafly Eagle Award for journalism. I'd spent time talking to her and hearing her speak in person toward the end of her life, and then I went back and familiarized myself with her during the Equal Rights Amendment fight. And for people that kind of in the modern political fight feel overwhelmed, I look back at that. You talk about standing in the breach. Phyllis Schlafly took it on the chin with dignity and good humor at a time when you would have thought she was the most backwards, hateful, bigoted person, the way they would speak of her as a woman, right?
Yeah, and still do.
Yeah.
No, I never had a chance to meet her, see her speak, but I find myself now going back and trying to read more of her work, because I think she's such an amazing example of just the counterculture.
She saw this, to your point. She saw this.
Yeah. And she wasn't a celebrity. She was just a very concerned woman and mother, and she got other women to do that. And I think that's one of the incredible things that because the left has so dominated our understanding of womanhood, that not only have they defined their position, but they've also been able to define the position of what they think is Phyllis Schlafly's position, or people that disagree with them. And they make us look look like doormats, really, or, portray us in a terrible light. They sort of waltz out the women in the red robes and the red hats and all of that, the red bonnets. And so they've been able to control the narrative on both sides. And Phyllis just completely blows that up because she was so articulate and sophisticated and savvy. She really knew what she was doing. And so I think she offers us an incredible hope of, these groups that are booming right now, Moms for Liberty and Moms for America, and just finally getting those of us who have felt like we're so alone and don't know how to engage in the culture war. We're finally kind of have a platform to start having our voice be heard in ways that it hasn't been heard in, probably since the Eagle Forum in the 1970s.
Do you know how to define feminism today? How do you define it? Because, for instance, I watch a lot of women. My wife and I do a separate podcast about Christian education, homeschooling, and I've come to meet a lot of women who've taken to things like homesteading, homeschooling. The entire universe of their family and their home life is run by them, truly. And to say homemaker is to sound, I think, a little too overly simplistic. I mean, they really are diving in and almost hitting rewind and trying to go back to an era that was almost pioneer in nature, if you will. There's this real resurgence there. And I look at women like that and I go, wow, they're tough and that's impressive. And do you define that as feminism? Is that that is, or something else?
No, I would say that's something else entirely. Part of the problem is that also feminism it's been this sort of like vague brand that people just sort of glom onto whatever they define it however they think they want to define it. But generally, a loose definition is this desire to help women. Now, of course, that's the big debate, is how do we actually help women? But what I found from my research was fascinating, because I found really three threads of it that started from the very beginning, the 1800s, when we think things were very pristine and Victorian, and they really weren't. And then we see through the communist era of influence that, eventually flipped into the new left and the woke culture. But those three elements that have been sustained are the occult, which is very much alive and well if you are paying any attention to current media today, but that was also very much a part of it from the very beginning. This idea of free love, of getting rid of monogamy and getting rid of any constraints on feminine or female sexuality. And then the third one is what we now call this smashing the patriarchy, which is this idea of collapsing male and female into just very egalitarian terms, and getting rid of any kind of masculine authority or even the gifts that men have. So those three things, I think, really define what the movement is and why it's an ideology and how it's been so pernicious. And we can really see this even in the new Barbie film. It's amazing. I went and watched it with my two daughters and was just blown away at how, the patriarchy piece was so evident. There's not a useful man in the whole movie, and things are in chaos when they're in control. But when the women are back in charge, everything's fine again. Has been really the goal. So in certain ways, it's a lot more complicated because it is much more of a developed ideology than people realize. But I think kind of figuring out what those pieces are makes it easier for those of us who don't want anything to do with those things to sort of figure out, like, okay, what I'm doing is something different, and I'm really trying to honor womanhood, in a respectful way, instead of getting absorbed into this ideology, which has been so deadly, especially if you look at abortion numbers and whatnot. So, yeah, I think it's important that we start parsing this out and helping women figure out what do we really mean by the term.
Dr. Carrie Gress, again, the book is called The End of Woman. I was talking with a male friend of mine the other day, and we were kind of discussing the era of the, if you want to call it, pinup girl or bombshell type actress. And there were eras, generations past, where they were prolific. There were many. I mean, kind of women and their sexuality were well known and marketed, put on posters and calendars, and not so much now. And I wonder, are we better off for that, or worse off for it, or was that normal or not normal? I was really kind of ruminating over that thought just this week, wondering to myself, it's almost like, I mean, unless you go on Instagram. Now, if you go on Instagram, you will see women who, of their own making, on their own, in their own control, will turn their Instagram account into look at me here, look at me looking fantastic in a swimsuit or whatever. But there's no kind of like, in fact, we've seen beer companies now actively say, like Miller Lite, sexualizing women or using bikini models to sell beer is, almost, I don't know. Again, back to The Handmaid's Tale or something. Was that a net negative culturally, do you think?
Actually, I think it's really interesting because I think you also have to look at the rise of porn and just just how much porn we have saturating the culture at this
Yes.
point. So I think that in many respects sort of has made the pinup obsolete. You think about pinups, especially during the wars, or there's that great scene in Shawshank Redemption where
Yeah.
Andy Dufresne has got pinup after pinup. You can tell which decade it is based on who's pinned up on his prison cell. Yeah, I think that porn has become a kind of surrogate in ways that it's this is like destroying so much of the culture that we probably won't even be able to figure out exactly the kind of damage that it's done until there's a postmortem on the culture. And we're seeing it's interesting. Last week there was a report about 12th grade boys and how they are really rejecting a lot of feminism and becoming more conservative. And I think some of that is because they don't really have to engage with girls anymore. Pornography is so prolific. They're not, girls are not, relationships are happening over technology in ways they didn't have, they used to happen in person. Yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons for it. And I haven't really thought about the pinup itself, but I think that, it's certainly been supplanted by something much more, engaging on a video screen.
20 years in business. Congratulations to Mike Lindell and MyPillow. 80 million pillows sold over those 20 years. Can you believe that number? Well, Mike and his team at MyPillow, they want to thank each and every one of you for giving them such success over these many years. And now they want to celebrate by giving you the lowest price in MyPillow history. He told me that if you call or log on to MyPillow.com or call them today, you'll get a queen-size MyPillow to celebrate their 20 years in business for just $19.98. 20 years and just about $20 with tax. How about that? $19.98, that's it, for a queen-size MyPillow. Do you know the regular price of this thing is almost $50 more? So you're talking about a $50 discount. By the way, for the king size, you'll get it for just $10 more, $29.98. It's a huge sale. And incidentally, in addition to these pillows that are deeply discounted right now, you go to MyPillow.com and you'll get a discount using my name, Chris Podcast. Use that as your promo code, Chris Podcast. Click on the radio listener square and enter that. And you're talking about mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, sheets, and of course the pillows, so much more. You can try it on. If ever you've gone to MyPillow.com and you've thought to yourself, maybe it's a little expensive, now's the time. Celebrate 20 years with Mike Lindell. And know this, 10-year warranty. 10 years they warranty these things. So if they ever wear out or you have trouble, you can exchange for brand new. 60 days they let you take this stuff home, and if you don't like it, you can send it back for a full refund. So you got nothing to lose but a great night's sleep on MyPillow products. I've colleagues I've sent these my slippers to. They love them. Christine loves hers. The sheets are comfortable. The towels are super absorbent. Even old Dean loves his dog bed. And we drink my coffee here at the office every day. I just brewed some this morning. MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, all right? With that warranty fully intact, or call 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056, promo code Chris Podcast, or MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, if you please to save. Yeah, and men are just, I think also, if I may, I think young men in particular are particularly terrified of engaging with women in person. I don't think they know how, and even if they were to try, they're told they're aggressors or or creepers or lurker. I mean, yeah. I don't know, and I get. Look, there's being a cad. I get it, and being gross. I do understand that, but just kind of the idea of, wow, there goes a beautiful woman in a beautiful dress today, almost makes me feel like I should, self-flagellate and, take myself out of the public square and public hanging or something,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the whole point. I mean, feminism has been kryptonite for men. I mean, talk about making men submissive. Like, you don't know, it feels like this bandsaw. Like, if you say anything, you're just walking into a disaster in a battle that you're never going to win. And that's how we know what this is really about, power. And that's what feminism has been, burning. That's its engine, to get men to shut up and to let women be in charge. But women are also simultaneously victims. So they have this status above what men have, in a certain respect. So yeah, things have really become so twisted. And I think that you're right to point out those examples of just nobody knows how to behave anymore.
Doctor,
everybody's afraid of offending someone.
Yeah, Dr. Gress's book is called The End of Woman. Rush Limbaugh, he once said that feminism was created so that this is classic Rush, so that ugly women could advance. Was basically the way he said feminism was born out of that. But the kernel of truth in that is, I always thought to myself that women had a remarkable power. Because of their femininity. I laugh all the time that, to be a beautiful woman behind a bar, you serve guys a couple of cocktails, they'll empty their wallet. I mean, and I think who's really got the power in that dynamic? Men can act like dopes around a pretty woman, and she can. I've always thought there was a power dynamic in that was understated. To me, now I know that's not true for every woman, but. I don't know. It's like I don't see beautiful women as put upon, in particular, beautiful women. I've always thought I hate to say this because, average-looking people are in a different category, and I'm sub-average, so I understand. But women have a unique ability, do they not, and a power and an influence over men that I don't think was ever really acknowledged in this notion that they're victims.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the fascinating things I discovered in my book, though, was just how many of the women that have created feminism and now, the subsequent public policy, these are really broken women who had very difficult, challenging lives. And it's the rage and the anger that are driving this. And, then you've thrown a little Marxism. Men are the oppressors, women are the victims. And that, just runs through the culture like wildfire. Leading to, of course, all the woke stuff that we're dealing with right now. But yeah, I think absolutely there, women, a beautiful smile from a woman can go so much further than, nagging. I've, of course, learned this the hard way with raising 5 children, been married for 15 years. But in any event, I think that women do have an incredible power that we don't even recognize anymore because we have suppressed what it means to be feminine and, how we love our families and serve them in very quiet ways. And all of these things that women have done in the past are now sort of painted over as codependency or, people pleasers or whatever. And, I think that that's just the saddest thing. It's just this deformation of what womanhood really is and how it's really functions in complementarity with manhood and all of that. So, there's a big mess.
I don't think I know. I couldn't, maybe I know personally one or two jerks who I would call not great husbands. But on balance, most every man I know who's married in a traditional man-woman relationship, I don't know a single man who wouldn't move heaven and earth and bend over backwards for his wife if his wife asked him, if you're out fishing, golfing, if you're late. It's very, very abundantly clear with 9 out of 10 men that if his wife needs something, he jumps. It's not. I don't think that's the exception. I think that's the rule generally in a relationship. I've found anyway.
I think that's what healthy, good men do. I mean and that's what's lost, and that's what's obviously not portrayed in the culture. I mean that's, everything has to be distorted and made look awful, and all the terrible examples are the ones that are pulled out for all the rest of us to say, you men are terrible, every one of you. So yeah, I think. How
do you think it ends, Dr. Gress? Do you think women, does this circle back around? Because I find it amazing that we're in a place where women are actively, people think the Megan Rapinoes of the soccer world are actually championing the notion that men should take their place. They're the women that are standing up and speaking out against it, and those that are advocating for it. And I think, gosh, that's suicide for women, isn't it, to advocate for that?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the key is we can't keep doing what we've been doing. I mean, we have to start going back and looking at like, oh, wow, maybe there are some elements of the patriarchy, by which I mean a husband who loves his wife and children and wants to see everyone in the family flourish. All of these kinds of things that we've decidedly, think are just awful. So yeah, I think it's a matter of really helping people understand how deeply we've been indoctrinated by this. And of course, that's what I try to do in the book. But I'm also seeing glimmers of hope, as I mentioned, with these moms groups, and people are fired up about this. This is finally, the Bud Light thing. I think that was astounding to me because I've been watching sort of these half-hearted boycotts happening over the years and to no effect. But that was pretty amazing. The Target one is really amazing because that's those of us women who just love to go to Target and walk around. And that's really hard to give up. My kids are like, when are we going back to Target? I'm like, we're never going back to Target. But
my wife did the same thing. That is a remarkable thing, because that's a bit, again, not to sound like a cliche or a stereotype, but women uniquely do seem to love the act of walking around a Target. And now my wife and daughter have actually both kind of tried to make the conscientious choice to not do that any longer.
Yeah. But I think one thing that we can do as conservatives that we are not doing well is really jump back into media, whether it's movies or magazines. I think Magnolia is probably the only magazine at the checkout counter that I can grab and think, okay, maybe there won't be something in here that offends my sensibilities. But we don't touch that. We sort of see these things as fluff, and that's actually really how women have been indoctrinated and destroyed, is through daytime TV, even something that's seemingly innocuous as HGTV. Like all of these things, why don't we have ones that represent our values? Because they're a lot more compelling, actually, and a lot more beautiful than what the left is presenting. So I think that's something that we need to start thinking about instead of passing it off as something unimportant, and start getting our messaging out in beautiful ways. And I've done that in my own life I've published a series of books called Theology of Home that just show, dads looking like real dads and real men, and children and pregnant women, and all these forbidden pictures of people who are living in very happy families, and matching that with really rich content. And people have been buying these books up. So it's really heartening. I think there's a market for it. People want more content that's fun and engaging. Like, this is why we like Target. There's something fun about seeing new stuff. And just really speaks to the heart of a woman and the way that she absorbs content.
Let me close by asking you, I'm a Christian. I gather you are too, from what I've read about you. I haven't met you before, but I believe you're a believer, I think.
I am a believer. Yep.
And having asked that question, how do you see the state of womanhood through the lens of being a Christian? How do you explain that to people? Because I do often hear Christianity weaponized as some sort of backwards, like it somehow demoralizes, deflates, depresses the importance of women. How do you describe and talk about that through the prism of your faith?
Yeah, that could be a whole nother conversation, but I think, part of it is just really recognizing how feminism has really turned the order of creation that we know from Scripture on its head. In Scripture, in Genesis, we get, God creates Adam. From Adam comes Eve, who's his helpmate. And then from there, they have dominion over creation. And I think what we are doing now is we've got, there's actually a lot of content about rewriting Genesis in the feminist movement and making the serpent the wise one. And then he whispers in Eve's ear, and then Eve has dominion over everything. And I think this is what we've done, is we've just taken the creation story and turned it on its head. So God, the whole conversation. So I think that's what we're living in. But I think the flip side of that is something so much more beautiful and compelling, because of course, the real goal of every Christian is to get themselves and the ones that, people we love to heaven. And that's really the goal that our homes are, why we have this desire to have a beautiful home, to have it feel like a sanctuary. We desire something that we've never seen. We desire heaven. So I think this is one of the gifts that women have the capacity to bring to their families and work in conjunction with their husbands, is to create a beautiful home and a place where people feel loved and nourished, and they're able to become who God meant for them to be. And I think that's it's just an incredible opportunity that we have, and something that we've really shirked and been told is bad, because we're meant to be out in the workplace or be much more narcissistic or cynical. So anyway, I think there's a beautiful vision of it that we've just completely missed because we've been so distracted by.
That's amazing. I've never heard that, and I find that profound. I have to sit with that for a minute, because I'd never heard that analogy, that making a home, people feeling warm at home, that saying cleanliness is next to godliness, order, all of that you see as biblical in nature, actually, and I had not ever considered the meaning of home. I mean, to the extent that people love being home and someone being a homemaker and place feeling safe and beautiful and well-fed and cared for, and those are all attributes for believers that we hope will be in an unmeasurable amount in heaven. I'd never thought about it that way. That's beautiful, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, it's all in my book, Theology of Home 1. We have our fourth edition is coming out this fall, but in the very first one, that's really what we lay out, are all those ideas that we can see in our home, things like welcoming and hospitality, or is another part of it. That those are the marks of things that we long for, that we want on an eternal scale, but obviously can't get to yet.
Well, I'm going to have you back on that then for another conversation. But in the meantime, your brand new book is called The End of Woman, How Smashing the Patriarchy Has Destroyed Us. I am so grateful for this conversation. I hope it won't be our last, Dr. Carrie Gress. Thank you.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.